Yo guys, what is up? It is Alex or Black Eye here, and this is the Smite 9.10 patch notes in 10 minutes. As always, this will not be an in-depth review of the patch notes and more of a general summary. If you want something more in-depth, then I'd recommend reading the actual patch notes itself, link in the description. Without further ado, let's get started. To start off, let's talk about Maui. Maui is a guardian with a unique auto attack. Every auto attack is at a medium to short range instead of a normal melee auto attack, and every single auto will cleave. Maui's passive gives him an enhanced basic attack, and when enemy gods are hit by this enhanced basic attack, gods are pulled toward him. To get this enhanced basic attack, an enemy god has to be hit by a hard CC effect near Maui, where they are then marked for the duration of the crowd control, and for an additional 2 seconds. If Maui then basic attacks an enemy god with this mark, he then gets his enhanced basic attack. This has a 10-second internal cooldown. Maui's first ability charges up his hook, and the longer it charges, the further it'll go. When he refires it, if the hook hits an enemy, it does damage and pulls the god toward him. This also cripples the god and vortexes them, similar to a Baron Samedi ult. Maui's second ability is kind of an aura that he can place down, where allies within this aura have increased protections and movement speed for 5 seconds. In the middle of this aura is a pillar of water that lasts for 10 seconds, and if an allied god stands on the water for 1 second, a bubble forms around them and carries them to Maui's current location. They then receive protections and movement speed for 5 seconds. Maui's third ability is classified as a leap, and he swings back and forth from his hook, and he can choose where to slam on the ground, and it deals damage and stuns enemies in the area. Maui's ultimate ability allows him to become CC immune, and he leaps into the air. He throws his hook at the target area and pulls up an island, knocking all enemies in the area up into the air and pulling them in front of Maui. The island then remains on the battlefield, blocking player movement for 4 seconds. Maui can reactivate the ability early to cancel the island. It's worth noting that the inner circle is only where the island will be placed, but all gods within the outer circle will be hit with the damage and knockup. Now let's move on to the skins. Maui is getting a good bit of skins on release actually. We have Sun Tamer Maui, Ascended Maui, Detoxify Maui, and as always with the new god, the Mastery skins. We are getting another skin from the Ruby crossover from almost 3 years ago with Cinderfall Morgan Le Fay. Scylla is getting Toonie Terror Scylla. Scotty is getting Cyberwolf Scotty. Ra is getting Plague Purger Ra. Bastet is getting Honey Bunny Bastet. Aphrodite is getting Dark Magic Aphrodite. Nox is getting Bloody Moon Nox. Sylvanas is getting Blazing Tormentor Sylvanas, and Xbalanque is getting Darkest Night Xbalanque. The bonus balance that goes live on November 1st will also feature some skins. Guan Yu is getting Primordial Paragon Guan Yu, Kali is getting Spy Master Kali, and Thor is getting Rumbly Chibi Thor. If you need gems to buy these skins, then I'd recommend using my Nexus code, which not only gives you gems for the same price, but also supports me as a content creator. I don't normally talk about Smite Night, but I think there is something worth bringing up. During week 2, after the patch drops, there will be a collaboration with the music band Hath. The rewards earned during this week include the Hath Music Pack and the Hath Avatar. The only change for quality of life is having updated CC bar icons. Notably, the Root and Mesmerize icons are brand new. Other existing hard CCs have had their icons adjusted to better align with their effects. Moving on to bug fixes, there are actually some pretty significant ones, especially for console players. There's been an issue on console for a while now, where in the pre-match lobby there are consistent freezes. Well, they fixed the issue that is likely causing most of these freezes, and they'll continue to monitor the issue after release of the update. They also fixed an issue where auto build would not purchase relic upgrades. They fixed an issue with King Arthur where his basic attack charge would often pull him towards another direction instead of towards the target. And they fixed an issue where Tiamat's Summon Beast Minotaur would dash backwards or towards the initial spawn location instead of towards the enemy god. And finally, with Mannequin's Hidden Blade, they fixed an issue where the passive was not proccing correctly on jungle monsters or bosses. As always, there are more bug fixes, but I thought these were the most significant that I ought to share. Moving on to game mode changes. There are various objectives around the Conquest map that are getting changed. The Naga on the duo side that holds the Jimmy, the scepter, is getting buffed. The Jimmy itself is also getting a decrease in base damage. The Gold Fury is also getting some nerfs, where the base gold is getting decreased, and the health, protections, and magical power is also getting decreased, but it will have increased magical scaling per minute. The base magical power decrease and the increase in magical power scaling applies also to Primal and Oni Fury. And finally, similar to the Gold Fury, killing the Pyromancer will give you less gold than previously, as well as less experience than previously. They also decrease the Pyromancer's base health. Moving on to items, Purification beads are getting changed, where you can now use beads at any time while you are alive. This includes during the pre and post fire of abilities, during leaps, dashes, and other channeled abilities, as well as while you're untargetable and other immunities. Warlock Staff now only provides % penetration once it's fully evolved. Book of Thoth now gets 10 magical penetration when evolved. Karen's Coin is getting its magical power increased by 10. Silver Branch Bow is seeing a decrease in physical power by 5 and an increase in cost by 150. Devourer's Gauntlet now provides 10 flat physical penetration when evolved. Heartseeker is getting a decrease in cost by 150. And they also decrease the physical power requirement to reach the maximum 6% bonus damage from 400 to 350. Heartward Amulet is getting the magical protections from its aura increased by 5, and this also applies to both of its glyphs. Hide of the Nemean Lion is also getting a buff, where the time it takes to gain 1 block stack from its passive is being decreased by 2 seconds. The shield you gain from Bancroft's Claw is being decreased by 0.25% of your max HP. Manticore Spikes is getting a cost increase by 200, and Fey Blessed Hoops is getting a cost increase by 100. I'd like to take a second to say that if you are watching this video, there's a really good chance you aren't subscribed. I'd really appreciate your subscription, but even if you don't, thank you for making it this far into the video. Okay, back to the patch notes. And finally, let's move on to the god changes. Camazotz is getting the scaling of his first ability increased by 10%. Thor is... holy fuck. Thor's first ability is getting a decrease in mana by 15 at all ranks. His second ability will now do a small amount of damage, which also means that it can proc item effects. And his ultimate has been updated where the bonus effects of this ability will also trigger on the damage from his second ability. For Ganesha, the self-slow from his second ability is being decreased by 5%. And finally, the base cooldown of his third ability is being decreased by 1, but it will also decrease in cooldown as you level it up. For Athena, her second ability is getting a decrease in cooldown. Instead of 18 seconds flat, it will now decrease as you level it up. For Athena's ultimate, she will gain 35% damage mitigation while channeling the ability, as well as the damage mitigation on the ally is being increased from 30% to 35%. For Hercules' base stats, his basic attack speed is being increased per level from 0.8 to 1. And also the physical power he gains per stack on his passive is being increased by 2. For Tyr, his third ability now provides 50% of the benefits while in the opposing stance in addition to the current bonuses. So for example, he would gain half the physical power he normally would while in defense stance, and he will gain half the protections he normally would while in the assault stance. For Shiva, the movement speed buff he gains from his Bliss stance on his first ability is getting increased by 5. And the protection reduction debuff from his Destruction stance is getting increased by 1 per level. And finally, the attack speed buff in Bliss stance and the attack speed debuff in Destruction stance is being increased by 5%. For Morgan Le Fay, her first and third ability are getting a decrease in cooldown by 1 second. Soul's second and ultimate ability are getting an increase in magical power scaling by 5%. For Giannis, his third ability is getting a decrease in cooldown by 2 seconds, and his ultimate ability is getting an increase in magical power scaling by 15%. For Onher, the base damage of his second ability is being increased by 15 at all ranks, as well as the physical power scaling is being increased by 5%. For Charybdis, her first ability is getting increased splinter base damage by 10 at all ranks, as well as her second ability getting an increase in base damage by 10 at all ranks. And finally, for Ishtar, the duration that her first ability lasts is getting increased by 1 second. The damage of Storm Shot is getting increased by 5% of Ishtar's basic attack damage. And the damage from Spike Shot is getting increased for the early ranks, but not for max rank. And finally, the base damage of her second ability is being increased. And that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Black Eye, and I'll see you in the next video. We sell the clowns around, it look like circus show. This is not the
pockets don't be